when I take my kids out and do stuff, I ensure their safety, but I also push them to their limits. Like we go on some hard hikes as 10-year-old boys, like hiking some hard mountains, and like they want to give up. And you know what? We keep pushing. But at the end of it, you're like, all right, we got this. That's what a good coach does. That's what a good leader does. He takes you to higher levels and you think not possible on your own. So that's developing that courage muscle.
The goal of the Best You podcast is to allow you to feel confident about what you need to do, why you need to do it, and how to do it in order to get closer and closer to your best you. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I am super fired up to be joined by the one and only Randy Garn. Randy, I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for spending the time with me today.
Love it, man. Nick, it's great to be with you. I've loved your show, loved your podcast. I listened to some of your episodes, and I love that you're helping people be their best. There's nothing better.
Well, I appreciate it. And right back at you. Well, I want to give everybody a quick little overview on you a little bit and then kind of follow that up with a question. I know that you were one of 6 kids and you were heavily influenced by your father, who was a high school football coach and a rancher. And so I loved that when you guys were in the car with him, you would listen to Les Brown and a lot of different motivational speakers and stuff. And I think that's such a great programming at such a young age. And then I also know that you did a lot of entrepreneurial things at a very young age. I know you sold worms when you were like 11, 12, and 13. You built a mini golf course at your house and sold tickets to it and different things of that nature. And I think one of the things that I love that I've heard you say before is you always had this will to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. And I think that is such a powerful thing for all of us to have the will to be self-sufficient and not feel like we need to rely on anybody else for our own success or our own progress. And so kind of the question following that is, do you feel like that's something that came because of how your father or your parents raised you? Do you think that's something that was ingrained in you? Tell us a little bit about how you think the will of self-reliance came.
I do think a lot of it came into kind of my upbringing from my mom and my dad. I think a lot of it came from our faith. Like one of the things that we really pride on is, taking care of yourself and not having to rely upon anything else spiritually, emotionally, physically, that you literally can do it on your own. And I think that's one thing that I preach and I try to live myself is, you have to rely upon others. You have to build teams, but self-reliance is one where you could do it on your own, and you could survive. You don't have the stresses. So I always try to get to that place. I think that was some of it. But there's 6 kids, and I think, I'm the main one that's an entrepreneur. So at the same time, I can't say that it was just like we're all different. But yet I chose the path of entrepreneurship more so than probably any of my other family members. So,
yeah, I think everybody needs to make sure they're not hearing what we're not saying. We're not saying that you don't need other people, because that's obviously the opposite of what we're saying, because I know that you're so much about building teams and stuff. Have there ever been a moment or different experiences in your life where you have taken the self-reliance too far, where you have not asked for enough help from other people when maybe you should have?
You know what? Yes. A really good experience I had is that when I was 18 years old, I went and lived in the Philippines for 2 years. And I tried to do everything on my own. I tried to it was just me and God, just trying to do everything on my own and, trying to be the best I could, trying to do everything that I could as a young man. And I remember after my 2 years, the leader that oversaw me, and I respected him a ton. He literally and he always kind of gives everybody like a closing remark before you fly home. But one thing that leader said, he's like, Randy, never be afraid to ask for help. He's like, you don't need to do all this on your own. He's like, you are an amazing human. But he's like, I do want you to know, do not be afraid to ask for help. People will want to help you. And that was tremendous advice that came from him, because you do want to be self-reliant. But again, at the same time, it's like when you get to be self-reliant, then you can also help support others. But just him saying that to me, it took like a weight off my shoulders, to be honest with you.
No, I think that's really powerful for somebody that you look up to and you feel like has a lot of answers. When they tell you that, you're like, oh, you ask for help, and it's empowering for you to be able to ask for help as well. I think I kind of want to stick here just a little bit longer because I think it's important to have the ability to decide when you should ask for help versus when you shouldn't. Do you have maybe something subconsciously that you run through your mind, or maybe it's conscious, where you are trying to determine whether or not you should be asking for help for something, or whether or not it's something that you can figure out on your own? Or is there something, a lens that you look through that can help you decide which route to take?
Yeah, I have kind of three principles I always talk about: how to automate, delegate, and eliminate. Well, those are three things that I preach a ton, how to automate, delegate, and eliminate things in your life. And so, you know, if you can automate it, you've already done it one time on your own, and you can set that system and that process up. I always like to think about what are the things that I can delegate that aren't driving the most value for my time, right? I mean, I have an amazing, amazing chief of staff. She literally handles all my emails. She's just on top of stuff, scheduling. She is handling so much stuff. And then I have another person that just handles like all the little odds and ends stuff, so that I can focus on doing this podcast, so that I can focus on my big partnerships, so that I can focus on big contracts, so that I can focus on things that actually move the needle. I think too many times, and I learned this a ton from a mentor of mine, Harvey McKay, is that one of the things that he always quoted, who was it that said, "There's nothing more frustrating than doing something, to your best ability that should not be done at all." And so I think that's important to look at every single day. And what are the tasks at hand, and what do you need to do? What do you need to do, and what can you delegate? Because I'll bet if you figured out your life a lot better, I think you would make so much more money if you got really, really, really efficient at those three things: automating, delegating, and eliminating things in your life. So that's kind of a lens I look at. I try to just every night I journal and I write down the 5 most important things that I must do. And I don't finish that day until those things are done. And I usually do the hardest things first. Sometimes there's timing involved and things like that. You got to wait for things in process. I've got a big contract I'm working on right now. I need to wait to hear back from one other person before I can set up the next meeting, but I've got it all done. I got it ready to go. And we're looking at some really fun stuff. So but I think those are some of the things that I look through on how I decide whether I should do it and be self-reliant, or is a part of self-reliance building a great team as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Having other people around you that you can delegate to when things are not a best use of your time is key. And so one of the things that I think you said was that, one of the worst things you can do is give it a 100%, you're 100% and do something really well that you shouldn't have never done in the first place. And I've kind of heard a similar quote, or at least I feel like it's pretty similar, is like the ultimate failure is reaching a mountaintop that you don't actually care to be on. And so I think oftentimes we can work to climb certain mountaintops that we don't actually care to climb if we never crafted an intentional vision for our life and where we want to go. And so I want to talk to you a little about creating a vision for our life. And so with that said, did you have maybe 10 years ago a vision for where you wanted to be today? And if so, how much different was maybe that vision from where you are?
It's interesting because I do think that strategy, I'm actually where I'm at today is where I envisioned it, but how I got here was very roundabout. Very, very interesting. But I am where I'm at today, that I love what I do. But it was kind of navigating a massive, river, or, whatever it may be, to find my Polaris point, to find my North Star. And you can't see the dots forward. You can only see them looking back. And so I think the main thing that I've done well is managing really well key and important relationships. You never know who the treasure map to the treasure is. And you never know who somebody's brother is that's going to introduce you to somebody that's going to like impact your life forever. And so I think that am I doing exactly what I wanted to do, 10, 15 years ago? Yes. Am I working with the people that I thought I was going to work with? I'm actually working with better people than I thought I was going to work with. So that has actually changed when the caliber of individuals and humans that I decided to proximity is power is at the level of caliber of people that I'm associating with. I was thinking too small. And now all of my friends they are pretty amazing. I'm not a lot of people hear about me because I'm actually the guy behind the back. I'm the guy behind the curtains. I'm actually an integrator. So I'm literally, building some really, really cool stuff out right now. And you're seeing a lot of it being manifested on different thought leaders and different trainings and different companies that I'm on the board with. And so a lot of neat things are happening. But am I dealing now? I look back and I'm like, I'm dealing with like my best friends. I'm working with my best friends. I'm working with people that I love, like, and respect. And it wasn't always that way. I'd say like 6 years ago is a little different. I was working with some people that, you just have to, their P over their E squared, their principles and personal integrity have to be higher than their ego and self-economic interest. Right. So but because I did that, I actually appreciate where I'm at so much more now. I mean, some of those things you have to go through so that you can really understand where you want to be.
Yeah. That's great. I think there's so many different things in there I want to try to touch on real quickly. And the first one is how you said, I had a vision and I'm basically where I was going to be, but the strategy was different. And I think that's one of the things that we all need to always remind ourselves of is it's vision first and then strategy. You got to you can't let the strategy drive the vision. And that's something that I have been working on myself, is not try to define the dots first and then decide how I can, or where I'm going to go. It's like where I want to go first and then find the dots after that. So I think that was really critical. One of the things that you said. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is, I know that you said that you found yourself thinking smaller, maybe playing smaller than you should have been. How did you break out of that mindset? We'll be back to the interview in just a second, but first I wanted to share some words from a participant of the 10-week transformation. At Best You, we started running the 10WT back in January of 2020 and have since had 313 people and counting go through it. They've seen their bodies get stronger than ever before, they've seen the stubborn fat finally come off, and they've seen their habits dramatically improve. And honestly, more than anything, they've seen their self-confidence skyrocket. If you want to learn more about the 10-week transformation, then you can go to nickcarrier.com/10WT. That's nickcarrier.com/10WT. We'll get back to the show in just a second, but first, here's what they had to say.
My name is Bo, and the reason I joined the 10-week program is really just to continue to excel and get better at my physical health and well-being. I've done the 10-week program before, and really results so far, and every one of them, I've lost weight each time I've done it. I've gotten in better shape. I've also just been healthy all the way around, including physical well-being, but also mental health. This last time, I dropped about 5 pounds. Last time before, I probably down total around 20 pounds. My favorite part of the program, hard to say, but it's probably two things. One, I love the workouts, just having something that really, motivates you to get up out of bed. And then the equal parts is probably just the habits that you learn, be able to take care of yourself in the long term.
Honestly, I broke out of it by really investing in myself and really doubling down on personal development. Doubling down on continual study, doubling down on the individuals and people that I surround myself with. Nobody I surround myself with has any stinking thinking. I don't ever hear them complain. All I hear them like really talk about is like, dude, we're building, let's go, let's do this. From Brendan Burchard's one of my best friends, building out an amazing technology called Growth Day, and it's just exploding. I get to talk with I get to talk every day with just some amazing other leaders that I'm on the board with, and listening to some of the things that we're building and doing. So I think how not to play small is you have to look at your circle. You really do. It makes such a massive impact. So I've got my core, and one of the things that I 100% believe in is that with my phone, I've got my 25 favorites, and they're on here, and that's my core group. That's my tribe, dude. And then I've got my friends outside of that I do social stuff with and interactions and all that. And I got everybody else. So, but I've got this core group that I was like, dude, that's who I talk to every day. That's who we work with every day. We're best friends, and we're driving businesses and building value together. So there's a ton of great things that we can do with it. So.
No, I think that's so critical. The two things that you kind of touched on was building on your own personal development and your own personal growth, because I think that just gives you continually more and more confidence in yourself that you can do big things. And then the other thing is surrounding yourself with people. I'm relatively early on in my entrepreneurial journey, and I'm not too terribly long ago got a group of mentors of people who are a relatively good amount older than me who have done big things from a business standpoint. And I always thought too small from a financial standpoint, and they're asking me these questions, and it's kind of blowing my mind, but I'm like, oh wait, I'm so glad to have these people around who are pushing me to think bigger. And I think I would not be able to do that if I was just sitting by myself at my own desk in my own head.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the next thing I want to talk about that I think is key is, you talked about how you are kind of the person in the background of so many different of your friends. And that's kind of how I found you. I follow a lot of some of the big thought leaders that you work with, and some of the big thought leaders that are your best friends. And then you also talked about how you're an integrator. And I actually only probably a few months ago learned about kind of the integrator role in a business, how it's different from the visionary. And so what I would like for you, if you would do, is tell everybody what an integrator means, but then also talk about how you learned or came to the conclusion that was your role, and that was something that you should play based off of your uniqueness and your personality.
Well, I think, there's different things. If you read the book Rocket Fuel, it's such a great book. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're building a business, or if you're running a team, it's a really, really awesome book to read. And it really talks about the yin and yang of the visionary and the integrator. Is that to have a really good company, you have to have a really good visionary, and you have to have a really good integrator. I actually happen to be pretty strong on both, but probably stronger on the integration side. And I think that is because I actually love to get my hands in the meatloaf, and I love to work, and I literally love to see things go. A visionary is a lot of times one that will come up with a massive vision, and then he'll need really good people around him to execute. That's why I do sit on a lot of pretty big boards, because I can actually be a board member that helps them really move the needle in a lot of ways. And I found out that I'm an integrator with people and leaders. So I actually will come in and help the leadership team just get more dialed in, more productive, more focused, more clear, have more energy, raise their necessity, have more courage. And so my integration piece is actually the human capital side of things. And I think that's where I do the very best is leadership and leading. And so I help that leader that has a massive, vision. I can actually articulate that vision in such a way and rally the whole team around it. Where sometimes they have a really hard time doing that is getting their team, because it's hard to be a prophet in your own land sometimes. It's a true thing. And so that's why, I will sit on some pretty substantial advisory boards and helping with moving things forward in a big way. I've found that I've actually really, really loved doing that. Loved taking a vision and really executing to that. And that's kind of that yin and the yang. It's the missing piece in the integrator and visionary that I think I'm probably one of the best at.
That's great. One of the things you said you help leaders do a lot is make sure they stay focused. And I think that everybody needs to improve their focus. We're all inundated with innumerable number of distractions every single day. What are some of the principles that you maybe teach leaders to narrow their focus when they think to do more, more, more when it's really stay in your lane a little bit more and narrow your focus?
Well, it also depends on who you are, you know? So, if you're really good at marketing and that's the one thing you love to do, like stay focused on that. If you're really good at accounting and billing, stay focused on that. But some of the visionaries are actually I love it when I work with people because I'm actually more of an orchestra, you know. I like to work with the violins and the trombones and like everything to make some awesome music. And so it's really funny when people say, "Dude, well, what do you do?" You know, because I understand customer acquisition, I understand marketing, I understand people. So I'm more of a I really when orchestrating more so than just like a single player. If that makes sense. So I think it's understanding that. But if you have a specific core competency, that's my core competency is like doing that. But if you have a specific core competency, like, dude, I want to build the very biggest and best podcast in the whole world, and then that becomes your myopic. That's your like monomaniac. That's what I'm doing, and that's all I'm doing. You know. So I think it's just helping. It's understanding that.
Right. No, it's definitely very contextual, and some people are in their careers more generalists than they are specialists, and so their focus is a little bit more of a broad brush than somebody who might be more of a specialist. One of the things that I thought about when I was watching you in different interviews is I learned that I think this interview might have been a year ago, so I don't know if this is still true, but I heard that your daughter started maybe a jewelry business or something to that extent. Yeah. And one of the things that I am constantly fascinated by, I'm not a parent, not married or anything like that, don't have kids, but I think one of the things that so many parents do nowadays, and I'm not criticizing because I've never stepped in their shoes, but is they protect their child from risk or they protect their child from danger. And I want to hear from your standpoint and your point of view, how you're able to balance the love as a parent of not wanting to put them in danger, but also knowing that they need to experience some risk and they need to experience some downside in their life, and how you go about kind of navigating that balance, if you will.
Well, I mean, I think that it's true not only with my kids, but with adults as well. We like tomorrow we're going to Moab, Utah, and I'm speaking at a massive mastermind down there. We're taking the helicopter down and we're taking a guy that's never been on one. We're going to do some rappelling and all that. I mean, not only with kids, but there's so many adults and things that haven't really experienced things. I'm a full outdoorsman, hunting, fishing. I rode bulls in college. I'm like, let's go for it. I want to have squeeze the drop out of every bit of life. And I try to do that not only with my kids, so I take my kids fly fishing. I have 4 daughters and two sons. I've got 2 sets of twins. So it's like freaking herding cats around my house. But I take my daughters fly fishing. We're going horseback riding next week. And, I want them to experience those things. Every Saturday we try to do an adventure. So I'll take my family out, take my boys out, and we'll go side by side riding, or I'll teach them how to start a fire and how to, fill heat and how to get burned and how to have failure, doing sports. Getting them into sports, get them into football, get them into track, get them into soccer. So they can experience those things. They can experience loss. They can experience teamwork. They can experience life. My daughters are amazing ballerinas. They've been doing it since they're like 3 years old. They're both Claire and Nutcracker this year. And, just to see their discipline and their dedication, the teamwork they have, but also that I have 2 sets of twins. They're so unique and so different, and so everybody has a different risk tolerance, but you have to develop that courage muscle. You really do. And that courage muscle is not always doing experiences that are things. It could be starting that business, which you're freaking so scared to start. But I promise you, it will be the best thing you ever do, because if you don't do it, it's going to eat you alive. It's like, what is that thing that you're afraid to do? That's probably the exact thing you need to do. Stay safe when you're doing it. Be wise. Don't be dumb about it. When I take my kids out and do stuff, I ensure their safety, but I also push them to their limits. We go on some hard hikes as 10-year-old boys, hiking some hard mountains, and they want to give up. And you know what? We keep pushing. But at the end of it, you're like, all right, God, we got this. That's what a good coach does. That's what a good leader does. He takes you to higher levels than you think not possible on your own. So that's developing that courage muscle. And so I'm consciously thinking about that for myself, is like, how do I push myself even harder? How do I master the art of living? That's what I want to do.
And it kind of goes back to a little bit what you said before too, of not thinking small, but thinking bigger by being around other people. Like you said, any good leader, any good parent is going to try to get you to the next level that you didn't think that you were capable of yourself. And so if you're trying to get to a new level, get around people who will encourage you to take that risk and have you develop that courage muscle yourself. That's just so critical. So critical. Well, I want to make sure I get you out of here on time. So before I get to that last question here, Randy, I just want to acknowledge you for your ability, one, to kind of just do what you just said, to really challenge the different people in your life and your kids and your family. I think that's so much easier said than done. And for you to be able to do that, and for you to be able to do that with other companies and other business leaders and other team members as well, I think that's so key. And obviously that kind of principle really serves you well in your integrator role, especially when it comes to relationships and things of that nature. So it's pretty apparent what a lot of your uniquenesses are today. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Love it. Well, man, I love what you're doing. And I think this is sharing the goodness and helping people really understand, what's possible. Everything's possible everything's impossible until it's done, right? And so I think becoming your best version is you'll surprise yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Make sure you guys go follow Randy Garn on Instagram at Randy Garn, and you can look up his website at randygarn.com. So much great stuff there as well. But the last question here, Randy, is I think that getting closer to the best version of yourself is a constant journey and a unique journey. I don't think we actually ever get to that best version. And I also think the way that I get closer to the best version of myself is going to be a little bit different than the way that you get closer to the best version of yourself. So the last question is for you personally. If there are 3 things that you could currently do or 3 things that you could currently work on to get closer to that best version of Randy Garn that you could possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you could currently do or work on?
That's 3 things that I can work on. I need to do a full Ironman. That's my physicality. I did the Kona half Ironman.
Ooh.
So we're going to do the full Ironman, but COVID shut that down. And so I need to do a full Ironman. I think the other thing is I'm going double deep on just my spiritual side and really building a deep, meaningful relationship with God. And I think it's so important to just be worthy and to stay clear. And, I really don't waste my time on I don't watch TV. I don't watch, I'm so busy building stuff and doing stuff that I want to ensure that also that I'm spending time and putting aside time every single day for my personal relationship with God and my Savior. So that's important to me. And I think that's how I become my very best self, is to really ensure that I'm aligned with what's most important. And then I think for me too is I want to be the best dad and husband I possibly can be. There's no amount of success in business can compensate for failure in the home. And so I want to be, I want my kids to know I love them and I'm there for them and with them and stuff. So I think that's also a super, super important tip. So
that's awesome. That's very admirable and a great piece of advice, that no level of success outside of the home can compensate for failure inside of the home. That's great. That's great. Well, Randy, that's all we had today. That was super valuable, and I know absolutely everybody's going to love it. So I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thanks a ton, Nick. You're the best, man.
I got you.